stuff like no parking on the grass, or you know, how long trash barrels should be allowed to be out, and what color they should be, and what kind of fences we have, and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, we get so many calls to look at these things by different interest groups, and it seems like lately they've been kind of popping up. You know, it's almost like swatting flies, you know, trying to deal with them. So I was going to see, and you know, I'm sure that's, you know, what it's like for you guys too, and it seems like we're, you know, on a consistent line of talking about something like this, you know, on a regular basis. So I was going to see if there was any interest in putting together kind of a some kind of community group, community task force to kind of try to look at it in a holistic sense. You know, look at all the stuff that's going on, a lot of the neighborhood issues that people are bringing up, so that whenever you guys do make, and this doesn't go away from the no parking on the grass. I mean, I think we're far enough on that. We've got the revision to talk about at the workshop tonight, so you can, you know, see which direction we want to go from here on. But for other issues that are coming up, and I don't know, I mean, you know, for example, we've got the request outstanding from Project Stun to look at smoking in the parks. And, you know, that's... No smoking in the parks, right?
More smoking in the parks. Mandatory smoking.
Which isn't really a community design issue, but, you know, kind of one of those issues that, you know, would take some looking at. You know, have issues of, you know, there's a group really wanting us to look at some kind of regulation on how long the trash barrels can stay out by the curb, you know, to move them back. And just all of these things, you know, and it seems to me like it might be more efficient to look at them in, you know, as a whole, to kind of go through and see how all the issues interact with each other and where the issues are. You know, for example, another example is I got a complaint the other day from a citizen because there's a gentleman in their neighborhood that's building a chain link fence, and he's building it and it's extending out into the front yard. And it's another one of those really, really gray issues that we technically, you know, our design standards call for some kind of, what does it call for? I mean, opaque fence, or is it, I mean...
Right, not chain link, but was it 30% opaque within an area? And the confusion seems to come from, is it only in new neighborhoods? Does it call for a moratorium on chain link anywhere? Right,
so we've got that issue, whereas, you know, where is it even, you know, what's it even referring to? Is it, are those new development standards, or are those existing, you know, standards for new fence? And then you have the issue like we have here. What do we do, because we've got no fence permit? So what do we do if someone does put up a fence? You know, I mean, I don't know that it's good customer service to wait for someone to put something up and they spend all that money on them, and then we drive by in code and see it and like, oh, take it down. You know, so I mean, there's little issues like this, and that's just a couple of them that seem to kind of be cropping up as people get more involved and active in the community, which is great. It's great to have people active in the community. We want that, but you know, with that, with every action, as we've seen, you know, there's a sometimes equal or sometimes not equal, you know, opposite reaction for it. And so, you know, as we start dealing with these things, I just didn't know if you guys had any interest in maybe putting together a council task force or a task force of people throughout the community to kind of sit down and go through what we've got line by line, see some of the needs, so that we don't really piecemeal things together and we look at it in a bigger sense.
It's more on the aesthetic issue, isn't it? It's all about the aesthetic.
It seems to be right now. That's a lot of the calls for, you know, a lot of the calls that we're getting seem to kind of deal with it. I mean, outside of the Project Stun issue, most of the calls and the requests we're getting
That's
for
still aesthetic, in my opinion, because I hate looking at cigarette butts when I walk around the park.
Yeah.
You know, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Chuck? I can tell you're thinking something.
Well, it just seems to me like, guys, we cannot spend our lives chasing our tails. I mean, those are the thing. Well, 10,000 people. How many calls do you get that people don't put their dumpster back in a timely manner?
I got one.
1,000
again.
You got another one today? And we get.
That's not in the ordinances somewhere already?
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes you can drive down some of the streets. I mean, Harrison's a pretty good example. Drive down there on a trash day. Man, there's dumpsters there.
on trash day.
On trash
I
day.
understand that.
Yeah, well, you do it
That's
after
the point.
or before.
Please bring them out.
Well,
on
not
trash day.
trash day. Sorry.
And that's
Do it
what.
before or after. I mean, it's pretty bad.
And we're not necessarily even talking about you know, a group that's going to look at where can we make, tighter ordinances. I mean, I think that
Right.
really, if we were to do something, the goal should be let's look at everything as a whole and see how it works together, and what do we have that doesn't work here? What ordinances can we get rid of? Because as we're trying to really focus on the aesthetics of the community, which has consistently been one of this council's goals, and as we're putting in, as we're working code enforcement, as we have our new code enforcement officer that's going to be starting next week, as they're starting to go out in the community and do things. I mean, we want to really focus on the things that we can truly impact and have good, because in those areas of just like the existing, I mean, some people will consider it an existing no parking on the grass ordinance. I don't. But with that existing ordinance that has been used as a no parking on the grass ordinance in the past, I mean, the more area we have for gray, the more area we have for confusion with our residents, and the more frustration they're going to have at us. And I don't think that speaks well to customer service. And there are going to be rules and regulations that we need to have as a community that the norms of the community agree upon, but we want them to be as clear cut and as simple as possible, so that we minimize the discomfort of adhering to the ordinances.
Well, even if the task force could come up with some solutions, because when I talked about Harrison Street, there's like a couple of blocks, the houses are so close together, they can't get a dumpster even in between, to fit in between their houses, and that there's a problem. What's the solution for that?
Yeah.
They can't help that.
Yeah, and some of these things, can be addressed by zoning changes. Some of them can be addressed by ordinance changes. Another great example, how we should try to address things that have been issues. There's the issue of metal buildings that we've got. I guess metal buildings aren't allowed in any residential areas currently, and that's probably something good to have in some parts of town, but again, it's different parts of town. Is it really as relevant? And that's a lot of these questions that come up, and it puts us and as we're trying to be very streamlined and very fair and very equitable in how we enforce these ordinances, it gives a lot of room of gray where we don't really know where to go, and it hurts us, and we want to be as consistent and as even as possible, and a lot of these issues just over time, because they've been issues that they've been addressed one at a time, and here's this issue, and there it is, and then we'll come along and let's address this issue. And it might be time, as we're a growing community that's really involved in this, to have a task force that really sits down and takes a look and makes recommendations. And again, I don't think you're obviously the policy body, and you would be the selectors of it, but I don't know that we would want this to be a task force that's just focused on how can we make new laws. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the goal, but how can we maximize what we have to get the benefit? What can we do away with that's no longer relevant? How can we make it easy? How can we make it streamlined? How can we make it consistent with what other metro cities are doing? Just kind of those sort of things, rather than taking these issues one at a time and not really knowing the overall impact it's going to have to the pile that's already there.
Well, I sense some frustration in your voice over this thing, and these things come to me on a regular basis. A guy has had a cyclone fence on each side of him for 35 years. He decides he wants to get the grandchildren a dog. Does he have to put a wooden fence between two cyclone fences?
Yeah. Well,
I just think that, it really makes this, it looks crazy. So,
and that's an area where, depending on how you look at the ordinance, you could say either yes or no. And that's an example of some of the problems that we're having with it, because, does the fence ordinance require to new developments or new fences? And again, if
that's
he
where
just,
I thought we went with that,
and if he
for new
decided,
developments.
and if he decided just to put up a cyclone fence, and it turned out it was, what are we going to do about it? We don't have a permit for it. So, we're just going to wait till he spends the money and has it up, and then, and then we're in a lose-lose situation, because we tell the guy to take the fence down. That's obviously not being, in our current situation that we're dealing with, we have the option of taking making the guy take the fence down, and having the challenge of what the ordinance actually means, upsetting him after he spent all that money, or upsetting the neighbor 2 doors down that's greatly offended that fence has been put out in the front yard. So, and which is fine. But we know we're not going to always make people happy. And that's just the nature of the business. But it's a lot easier to explain these things and talk about them when you don't have that gray area and you've got a pretty set, this is what it's, this is yes, this is no, this is, and we've got a lot of areas where we can't really do that. And as more and more of these issues get brought to us, I just see the potential for there to be more of that. And I'd like to prevent it so that we can be streamlined, we can be, customer focused and not create confusion.
Well, do we just need to sit down ordinance at a time and make common sense out of them? And because, you can make an ordinance that thick, trying to touch on everything.
Yeah.
But the things that make good sense is metal buildings. We don't want metal buildings all down Division and out on Noble coming into town. But for me to have a nice shop in my backyard, and I mean a nice shop. I don't mean look like Joe's Milk Barn.
Right.
But I mean have a nice shop in there. I think we ought to have the right to be able to keep our toys in a nice building if we've got four-wheelers or you got old cars.
Yeah.
I think that coming in on our main thoroughfares that bring people into this community, we need to really enforce the 40-60 thing, 60-40, whichever one. You're supposed to have brick up, cover or some kind of coating up so high on the side of the building. I think that's tremendous to make the aesthetics coming into our city look wonderful. But I have a hard time being the hammer, and I know you do, on someone that wants to build, that brings plans. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to have an overhead door and a walk-through door. It's going to be brown or blue, whatever color his house is. Those are the people that I think that makes sense in a neighborhood.
I have a question. So, are you saying if a task force, would they sit down and go through all the ordinances and pick stuff out, or would you have a list of ordinances that you think are either unenforceable because they're too ambiguous, or specifically just look at all the aesthetic-oriented ones? I don't know.
I mean, I think that kind of, this would probably be a really good one that we'd, and really tonight I just want to gauge your interest on even, because I don't want to waste any time, spending staff time investigating, how to go about it or how to, set it up if there's no interest. But if there is interest, I would think that Randall would be a really, really good person to kind of bounce some ideas off of, because I know he's done a lot of this, and he would probably have some good ideas of, what kind of group to put together. And, I think it, could be a little of everything. I think, the focus would be on, like, design standards, planning and zoning codes, those kind of things. You'd want probably a wide variety of people on there, representatives from the planning commission, either a council member or two or appointees by you guys, just some kind of group that can sit there and kind of look at it as a whole and, look at our design standards, look at the ordinances that deal with community aesthetics, and then see how they all flow together, find where the gray areas are, and, but really, I don't have all the details. That's why I just kind of threw it up there is that if there's just interest in looking at this, we can kind of start seeing what route we'd want to take as far as setting one up.
What do you think, Matt? What do you think the 5 top deals that we need to look at? I mean, is it metal buildings? Is it fencing? Is it dogs running free? I mean, I'm just throwing that around. What 5 things do you and Renee hear on a daily basis?
In this area, probably the things that we get, that I think are very confusing are the metal buildings, the fences, no parking on the grass, obviously, which, we're addressing. Trash cans is one we get a lot of comment on. Issues with, and there's some legitimate concerns about that, and you know, probably more so than in this community, and especially in the downtown, than you'd see in other communities, because a lot of what our product is the way we look, to tourists and those kind of things. And you've got difficult situations when your product is a Victorian city. Certainly, the Victorian city was not made for giant automated trash trucks to, efficiently pick up, trash. So you've got these bright blue trash barrels that are out there, which, a lot of people, we need to change the color of the trash barrels. And that's really not realistic unless we get a new trash provider, which we're still under contract. And even if, we weren't, would it be justifiable to spend, to go above and beyond the low bid just to get a different color of trash barrel, so.
Make them look like rocks or something.
Yeah,
like boulders.
Yeah, paint them black. I don't know, but so I mean, issues like that comes up a lot, and it's certainly an issue with some people. To me, I think that personally, getting the fence situation lined out, getting the metal building situation lined out, looking at the property maintenance codes, and just kind of reviewing, how it all interacts is probably the top.
How about this, Matt? This is my thought is, how about in 2 weeks at the next workshop, bring us a proposal on who would be on this thing, and give us some more guidelines on what they would look at and how they'd go about it.
Well, but that would be completely up to you guys. I mean, who you'd want on it, and
I mean, just recommendations. Just give us a sense of who you really think should be on. I mean,
Not
obviously
necessarily
Renee would be on it.
like what kind of
Not
people?
necessarily,
Yeah,
names. Do you wanna see a
yeah.
developer on there, do you wanna see
Yeah.
Because you have a better sense exactly which ordinances, and you could give us the numbers,
Right.
maybe a little bit on what they are and the problems, and then we have a sense, but you need also this person, or we need that person, or hey, I want to be on it, or
Yeah.
as a councilman, so whatever. So I think that would be helpful for us.
And really, with a calling it a task force, I mean, I almost think that almost implies in its name that it's kind of a study group. A group to really get the information and dive into it, and maybe.
Sounds like we're gonna go do something. That's what it sounds like.
Well, and
This study
I don't even necessarily know that we know all the issues and all the problems. Usually when we're alerted to a problem, it's when we have to deal with it. So I would hope that the goal of the task force could kind of be to dive in and study some of these ordinances. Get a group that's willing to commit to spending some time learning about our zoning codes, learning about our zoning ordinances and development standards, those kind of things, and actually maybe identifying some problems proactively rather than reactively, because that.
What do we call that utility rate committee?
Yeah, I mean,
What do they call
the
it?
utility, the Citizens Rate and Fee Advisory Committee.
I kind of think that instead of a task force, there should be an advisory committee that tells us where the flaws are.
Okay, so you would see it
Task
more
force,
as,
like you said, says we're going out and go do something.
Yeah.
They're not.
so you would see it more as a group that would meet just to review ordinances before they would come to you guys.
a study group.
Not study.
I like that
Okay.
better than I do task force.
The
Yeah.
advisory.
I'd have marks across our faces. I mean, I'd like to see a cross section. We have several guys in this community that are handymen. I mean, that put storm windows in. For a large part of this, if those guys, you want somebody that's going to come and look at what we got, not come in to preach to us about what we ought to do, but somebody that makes good common sense proposals
Yeah.
in the thing. I think that would cut out a lot of you hearing that. If we could get down to common sense.
Well, and that is the goal of it. We need to have high community standards. We need to have high development standards, and there needs to be, I think even more so again in Guthrie than in other communities that you see. But those standards need to be flexible, and they need to have a way for us to have common sense built into them too.
Exactly. And I think that's what the community wants. They just, and sometimes headlines makes it look like we're the addition Nazis or the development Nazis, and we're really not. But we just are trying. I think we're trying as a council to make everybody's property respect their neighbor's
Yeah,
property.
yeah.
I think that's the bottom line. We're not trying to hammer anybody down, we just want everybody to respect each other's.
Yeah.
What about, isn't this kind of the jurisdiction of the planning commission itself?
Some of it, I mean, a lot of it is, you know, when they, and so that's why, I mean, I don't think we want to create another planning commission, because you do have kind of that citizens board already that's in place to, review zoning changes, review, those kind of things. But, a group that will really take the time to study the overall ordinances, find areas that we could do better, find areas that may be obsolete, those kind of things. And this may be a group that, is only together for, 8 or 9 months, and then it's disbanded once they have identified, flaws and
Well, the reason
suggestions.
the reason I ask is I thought, well, what if the planning commission just does that? I mean, they're already organized, they already know a lot of these ordinances anyway. They would have a sense of what the complaints and problems are, have them do a review, tell us where some of the problems are, and maybe they would bring it to another body to say this is what we think, and to the citizens as a sounding board, and then we could get involved as well at that point. But,
Yeah.
But really, a lot of it, it's like this language that we have to get through in the ordinances to figure out if this is good or not. They have a good sense of what works, what doesn't, what are the ambiguities, where are the complaints, and then it's almost like give somebody the ordinances, highlight all the problems, and then we can focus on those little highlights instead of trying to figure out what these ordinances are all about in the first place.
You got your historic group also,
Yeah,
Yeah,
which should have input on that.
definitely.
yeah.
Have those guys work together. I
Do
mean,
you,
that's
do you think the planning commission would be willing to do, some, once a month retreats together for a few hours at a time to kind of review and do, I mean, because that, if they would be willing to do that, it would, another opportunity for us to not duplicate, with another board or commission and just utilize one we have.
Yeah.
Maybe joint meetings of the
With this-
HP and the planning commission to,
Yeah, and
you
the
know,
Board of Adjustment.
Board
okay.
adjustment. Have those guys get together.
If you got a park issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why-
and they do, and that's, the Parks Board issues do that, and,
Yeah, we have been doing that on the planning commission. For example, right now, we're going through our subdivision guidelines, doing a rewrite on that. So on nights when we don't have a heavy load for that particular month, we'll do a workshop, et
Okay.
cetera. But I could see pulling together several different commissions that are already in existence, that would cover a whole lot of ground, so to
Yeah.
speak. Like the Parks Board and Planning and.
Well, and they could individually just start looking at their jurisdiction and tell us where they see problems. Then get together, bring those problems together and talk more about how they can work together and where the problems are, then bring it to us,
yeah.
something like that over time.
Yeah.
I mean, Parks Board can talk about where the problems with the parks, and they would know better than anybody else. They don't have to talk to the planning commission right off. I identify that for everyone else.
Yeah.
Planning commission identify their problems, historic preservation identify their problems, whoever else
Yeah, that's a
identify
good
and bring
idea.
it together for kind of like and you could even have liaisons. So if planning commission, all these boards get together, you don't have to have everybody, have like 2 reps from each group. They get together as their kind of ad hoc committee
that's-
for
that's
as
a good
long as
idea.
they need to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think, because planning, I think, would be, one of the premier ones, and if they're willing to do some of that and start, looking at some of these things and kind of giving input and maybe, finding, because that's another big question that I always sort of struggle with is what's the best way for an ordinance to get to the council? And it's one that, I mean, really the way it has been done is when, we get needs expressed by different groups in the community, we'll usually take it and put it into some form and then talk about it in workshops. And I mean, I don't know, but a great example is like the stun ordinance. I mean, if that's to be considered by council, what's the best process for it to get to you guys? It's it was presented to Parks Board, and Parks Board approved it, and then what do we do? I mean, should anything that's approved by a board or commission just automatically come to a council, to the council as an ordinance to consider, or should we request that these groups get a council person to sponsor it before, because it does have a little bit of a weird crossover into the policy area when it comes to us, we draft an ordinance and present it to you, because so oftentimes, it seems like we're the activists, trying to push the ordinance when it's really not. It's, we're responding to the, and so I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
I do like the idea of having those boards have to go through, find a councilman who thinks it's important enough to bring up to us.
Yeah.
That's.
But even
makes
even
sense.
even in an instance where the board has approved it, I mean, if the because if there was a citizen or a group that wanted something, I mean, should they, I think it would probably be a good idea to start with a council person and get a council person to champion, the discussion on the ordinance. But if it gets to, if they present it to Parks Board or something like that, and Parks Board, approves it, should it then still have to go to a council person, or should it, since they're your recommending body, should it just automatically come to you? I mean, it's
That's
just
a
kind of
good
one of those.
question.
It's I guess it's the whole thing speaks to a little bit of a grayer area in the policy process. Is where is, what's the best way?
There's times we bring up stuff, and I'm sure that ends up going back just like this. If it does, goes right back to those commissions and committees.
I think if you make it too rigid that someone has to get a council member to sponsor it or whatever, if it comes up another way, bring it on.
Yeah.
But if it,
The things we're having, correct me if I'm wrong, the things we're having misinterpretation on: fences, buildings, backyard metal buildings. Those came to us recently out of planning. So evidently, we need to interject some response from the community into those things. Those are the things that we've got. We took those as recommendations, and so somewhere we've got to put some common sense into this thing, and it's just not all black and white, maybe, Matt.
What makes me think of this is, for example, I remember we had a finance committee, and I'm not officially on that, but at finance committee, we've had these people come to the committee because they have leaks and things, and they plead their case. I could see in this case where, for example, somebody's talking about that fence, can I build it or not? This is a real gray area problem. Have that person go to the planning commission, and then you can go through it and look, how can we be fair with this person? And then in the large, bigger picture, when somebody else asks about this or this, what do we do? Does it make sense? And they can go back and forth with that person. So it originates from a citizen to the body who's the expert, and then they can talk about, and we recommend we want to make those changes to us.
Yeah. And I think some level of that is good, but you want to make sure that you don't create, I think we pride ourselves on trying to not act like traditional government, here, and I don't think we want to, if someone just wants to build a fence, I don't think we want to have them in a, 5 to 6 month bureaucratic loop.
No, I'm saying a gray area, like we've never thought of this is something we don't know what to do, but they could go to these guys, and it doesn't have to be 5 months, it could be they go to them, a couple weeks, and then a couple weeks later, they go into workshop, and we can talk more about it, because these guys really know the ordinance, to say, look, we want to bring it to you because there's a gray area in this ordinance. It's ambiguous. In this case, it just makes no sense. Is this a variance type of issue? And they might just say variance at that point and just say, variance works.
Yeah.
Or they might say, gosh, this makes no sense to say, we got to clarify, is it new development or not? Can you guys make that decision? And we'll make that decision, but they need to identify the gray area because they're the specialists, maybe.
Okay.
That's my thinking. We deal with gray areas. They deal with, identifying those gray areas for us, and we help resolve them.
Yeah. Okay. I think I've got some good direction, I think, to start working with Renee and having some of those discussions with the groups, and so I think that's.
All right, let's move on.
All right. Let's see. Next item: no parking on the grass ordinance. This was tabled at the last meeting.
Are the changes that Sherry brought up, are they in our Dropbox?
Yeah, they're in your workshop packet too.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I didn't put this on the actual agenda because I didn't want to just throw the changes out there. After the last meeting, Councilman Mueller made some recommended changes, and she did it in a very good way, so we can see the additions and subtractions, lines and strike-throughs, and even different colors. So it makes it very user-friendly to read.
it's supposed to be now.
I think mentioned
I
you
went
just went
over
to
this whole
review,
thing
right?
yesterday
Went
and
to
we did
review
very
and-
well and got here tonight.
Somewhat, yes.
Yeah.
Something of it, just got screwed up. So, screwed up myself.
I didn't have to do all those things yesterday.
Yeah.
IT, man.
Yeah, I might as well just be the IT director today at least. Oh yeah, what have you done here?
Oh, now it's me.
Yeah, it's you. There you go. You just had something funky pushed. There we go. Anyway, some changes. Does everyone have it in front of
yet.
them?
I'm working on it. Oops. Shoot. It's in the workshop packet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the second and third page of your workshop packet.
Oh, of course I opened the wrong one. 272. Oh, 221 packet.
So
Workshop,
we're
there it is.
striking what's in red.
Yeah, what's in red and struck through is what's currently in there that's being removed, and what's blue and underlined is what is been added.
Okay.
We all good? We have it in front of us?
Mhm.
Okay. The first change would be in section A, to where it pretty much specifies that it's for residentially owned real property. So that takes the question out, does it apply to businesses or not? And says, basically that shall allow, let's see,
So it won't apply to businesses?
it won't apply to businesses. So that pretty much makes it for yards. And it also puts in there, which I think is an important one, upon the front yard of any residentially owned real property within the city of Guthrie. And then it goes farther down, and we've got under the exceptions in B on 2. There's some additions there to where it's been added where it says to legally non-conforming off-street parking surfaces, i.e. parking in an area abutting an unpaved alley or any unpaved or unimproved driveway or parking lot, excluding grass surfaces. I think that just makes the grandfather clause a little bit more solid. And then it goes down and removes any of the information about the half-acre lots. So it takes that whole section out. And I think that that was obviously put in there as a concern of how it would apply to, the more rural areas. I think what's been done, but with this is that it adding the word, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misinterpreting any of the changes that you put,
No,
but
you're doing good.
by adding the front yard, it pretty much is standard across the board. It doesn't matter how much you've got, where you are, you can't park in your front yard. However, you would be able to park in your side and backyard, correct?
Right, it'd just be the cross-board, you're correct.
So, pretty much
What
it,
about these properties that, let's say on, off the highway, on Noble Way, on the, would be the east side of town, west side of town. There's some of these properties that are way back, you can barely even see the house, because they're so far back. I mean, it's a big enough property, that far back, you can't even see it anyway. Could they park in front of their house?
not by this. I think they'd be able to park to the side of their house, but the way I interpret front yard is anything past the front elevation of the house.
Of course, those might be out of town too, so I
I
don't.
mean,
Now explain to me why you took the half acre out again?
I took it out just to make it a cross-board, just to specify in the front, where we talked about it in A, that it specifies now upon the front yard, and so I didn't see the reason. I just thought I'd make it so everybody's the same, equal, no matter how big or small your property is. And so you can't park cars in the front yard, period, whether it's whatever size. Go ahead and give me your thoughts, it's nothing set in stone.
He
It's
will.
just something that
Well, I just know that was a big issue when it was put in there, that they wanted to exempt those people. Now you're not exempting those people if you take that out.
but I think what it does, the way I read it, it will open up, it will allow them to park on the side of their house and in their backyards.
just
So,
anybody would.
So I mean, I think it's still a little bit flexible because a lot of the other ordinances you'll see will say front or side yard. This one says front, so I think that
Okay.
you know could be kind of the same type of compromise as the half acre with it being, which you know from an enforcement standpoint is a good idea for us because realistically, if we see a car parked somewhere, we're not going to go and measure the acreage of the lot. You know, it's one of those.
don't have to
It'd be
measure
tough to enforce, but we can easily see
On
whether or
record.
not it's past the front elevation of the house or not.
Well, what's I guess one of my concerns is what's the front of the house, because I know of a lot of people who their real door is on the side of the house, right? Does it make sense? And then where they really the entrance is over here, the front. This is the front, and what looks like the front is really the side of the house. Does it make sense? So would it be really the side? Would it be what you see from the street, or is it where their door is? Maybe that should be defined.
Yeah, should.
Front,
I
the
mean,
front
we
is
have the-
where is on your address side of the house, correct?
Well, do you got?
I have a great example in my house. My address is really not where my door is. So East Oklahoma is my address, right? So that's
We'll
a
talk to
facing
you about that,
north. But it faces north. Well, some ways, a long time ago, if there was a door, they took it out because the door actually faces Cedar. So what's the front of my house? Is it on that side of the street on East Oklahoma, or is it on Cedar?
Are you on a
Is
corner?
it right in front of my house, or is it on the side? You know,
Are
I
you on a
couldn't
corner?
really tell you if you go to my address, that to me is the side of the house. If you go by my door, that's where I see is the front of the house. But maybe you would not see it that way because you look at the address.
You may want to define it better.
Yeah, we have
Should
to-
should we maybe add a definition of front yard?
I guess so.
What would we define a front yard then?
I
What we see, or what the address is? Because I think the address is problematic, and for
Because the
me.
problem is you're gonna have problems with people parking in the side yard because it's abutting the street, it's between
Yeah,
the front
Someone
and the
else
house.
is gonna say that's their front yard.
So,
Maybe there would be a special provision for corner lots.
Yeah, mine's a
Because
corner
it's
lot.
not so much
So,
where
Is it
is the
curved?
front
Do you have
door,
curves?
but a
Curves?
corner.
what when the curves? We had sidewalk. Well, sidewalk on one side and not sidewalk on the other. But it is a corner lot.
Well, I have a
It's 2
corner
lots,
this year, and I
really.
park my car under my house, so is that gonna be an issue? Just wanna make
I
sure.
think it would be.
under your house.
Because it's officially under my house, so I wanna make sure that's not an issue.
Send your portico chair to the side.
Is that considered your front yard though?
I mean, I guess we would probably need to define front
I
yard.
guess so.
I mean, it didn't occur to me just now, especially if that's a key thing, is what your front yard is.
Okay, so
I don't know what that is.
so if we can define front yard,
Wow, where's the dead horse?
Where's that dead horse? That's over there flogging it.
but then it does, you know, it takes the half lot out or the half acre lot out, and then all those provisions with it. So it kind of, you know, changes, you know, the limit. Vehicles must never be parked on the grass for more than 36 consecutive hours. You know, all that stuff, because it pretty much just says can't park in the front yard. Period. You know, so if there's someone that does have an acreage or something like that, chances are they're going to have area behind the house that's big enough if they want to park out there.
Beside the house.
Yeah, beside the house, or let's see, it leaves it in where it's, you know, it's not valid on federal, state holidays and official community events. Got this area where it says in areas where there is no curb, vehicles may be parked on the grass parallel to the road, provided the wheels closest to the road are more than 2 feet off the driving surface. It removes the line that says vehicles may not be parked in this manner for more than 48 consecutive hours.
I like that because that's hard to, you know, you'd have to put a little chalk there and
Right.
see what's 48 hours.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to enforce. The only reason that originally I put that in there is to get through inoperable vehicle loopholes. But with inoperable vehicles, our ordinance basically, if a vehicle is visibly inoperable, meaning its tires are flat, windows broken, you know, something like that, is an indication it's visibly inoperable, or if it's not got a current tag. But, you know, sometimes you do have a tagged vehicle that's just doesn't run, and we were trying, you know, to prohibit that, but probably in most cases not going to be a huge issue. I doubt that's really the area where they would park an inoperable vehicle.
Mayor, what are you thinking? I can tell. You're thinking of something?
I like your changes, except for I was initially worried about the half acre. I feel better, but now the yard is not defined. So, but otherwise, I like your changes.
We can always find something wrong with something. That's
Sure.
the point. That if we want to do that, we can sit and pick it apart all day long, and we fix it, and then we'll find something else. But
And I wasn't here when this all started, so honestly, I mean, I didn't know about a half acre way.
well, I think the major point that most people don't understand is if we don't change this, and we say, okay, you go out and enforce what we got, it's going to be a lot tougher than what we got here. Am I correct in that?
It could go one of two ways. It could, if the municipal court held up a ticket that said, yes, that's a valid no parking on the grass ordinance, it would be tougher. But the way it's written, if I had to argue, if I was the code enforcement officer who had to stand in front of the judge and tell him why I wrote the ticket based on that ordinance, I would be doing so not with a good sense of confidence, because I mean, it basically, to me, it's more of a development standard than a no parking on the grass ordinance. So, I mean, I guess it's how you take it, because it essentially says, you can't park on any unimproved area or unimproved surface, essentially. And so, I mean, that kind of means gravel, that kind of means, so that means that technically anyone with a gravel parking lot is illegal right now. Anyone parking. I mean, so if you took the extreme harsh version of it, it would be. It's a very, very.
That's what I'm trying to say is that people don't
ordinance.
seem to understand that we are giving them relief by changing this, and they don't want us to write this, but we're giving them some pretty good relief because we're defining things much better, and it's going to be much more clear.
Well,
and
I think that's a point too. Most of the feedback we have gotten from the ordinance, we've pulled this ordinance 3 times and done 3 separate polls on the website. That was the direction you guys originally gave me in July or whatever. And each time we've polled it, it's had about between 65 and 73% approval of putting an ordinance in place. Guthrie News Pages poll had about 55 to 60%, I think, in favor of the ordinance. I think most of there are some concerns, there are some people that are much against it, there is a lot of confusion about it.
that's the problem.
But for the most part, I think the concept is pretty well accepted. I've heard a lot of concern about the half acre. I've heard the concerns, it's been out there, there's been blogs and posts dedicated to the city of Guthrie is trying to be discriminate against the poor and cater to the wealthy with this, which that never crossed anyone's mind. I think when we were discussing it, the original point of putting that half acre in was to try to accommodate the differences between the more rural lifestyle versus the more in-town lifestyle.
Sure.
So, I think, what's presented here, granted we need to define the front yard. I mean, I think this is a very good way to look at it, because it keeps it out of the front yard everywhere and still gives flexibility in the side yard. So, you'll have instances probably that some of the neighborhood groups won't like, where there'll be a smaller lot, with yard here between the house, and they could, technically pull up. But it still gets rid of that, that first goal, which was to keep people from, basically driving up into the yard and parking in the grass right in front of their front door because they didn't want to park in the street, or, in some of the cases we've seen, some people that have brought up concern about having no place to park if this ordinance was in place. Well, once we go and look at the situation, it's because they've got carports that are filled with trash, junk, and debris. And so, so I think this is a good flexible ordinance. I like the changes. I think they're good. I can definitely see the point needing to define front yard, because in cases of corner lots that will be tricky.
And maybe just corner lots is an exception. I don't know.
Yeah, but
I mean, like I said, I like this. I've liked this the whole time. But then I just think of my problem. You go to any other corner lot, my door is not at my address. It's just not. I mean, so I could park. Where do I park?
I think the front yard is pretty obvious in most houses.
Most, but not corner lots.
And we can probably define it as something, using the front elevation of the house, and we could probably tie in something, facing a publicly owned street or something like that. I'm sure there's a way to define it where, to where it will accommodate that, but.
and we're gonna consider it in 2 weeks, so I mean, we can do this. It's not like, oh
Well,
God,
we-
there's an exception, so
we-
it's derailed and we're beating a dead horse, which has been said.
We
That's
don't.
kind of
and we-
silly. We have
We would never beat a dead horse.
we have 2 weeks to,
Drop that whip.
add language, and I'm 100% for this. That got brought up just now. I didn't think about it until it's like,
Right.
wait, what's my front yard, guys?
Yeah.
I mean, I want Z could go to my house. You tell me where my front yard is. I could argue it's the other one.
Yeah.
Really, because somebody's going to try to get away with that, and so code enforcement's kind of like, well, I guess
Well,
whatever you do.
outside of defining a front yard, are there other changes that you guys would like to see in the ordinance before we?
How are you gonna define the front yard?
Will you work with me to define the front yard?
You could go the Nichols Hills route and have no trucks on the street.
When code enforcement walks on their front porch, say, is this your front
Yeah,
yard?
is this your front yard? All right.
Well, they're starting out as really like pickups. Pickup.
You could do the main entrance side or something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we can find a good way to. I'm sure there's a definition of a front yard out there somewhere.
That's what about fencing the side yard so that no cars are exposed to.
What kind of fence does it have to be?
Totally opaque.
If that's the sentiment, do you want this brought back with that? Because what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is the only concern is the need for the definition of front yard. With that being the one change that we need to put in there, do you want this brought back at another workshop, or do you want this for consideration at the next
Let's
meeting?
consider it.
And,
Let's bring it up.
okay,
That's my opinion.
all right, well, we'll put a definition of front yard in there, and then put it on the next council meeting.
I would have voted on it last time, so just.
Put your pistols.
So don't be
under the
pointing at
table.
me for bringing up backyard. That's not my fault.
All right, how much time do we have?
Not very much.
Okay.
I do have one question to ask you guys on this. I know that several people had come up and said, variance this or that, and one had told me that the variance fee is $250. And I was wondering if we could do something for the citizens of Guthrie for like 60 to 90 days after this is passed to let them waive that fee, or 60 days. I mean, something reasonable so that people aren't having to pay that $250 fee because they're so concerned and worried about
Right.
it. To.
I think a lot of people think they need a variance when they really don't, from what I heard the other day.
I think some of that can be quickly put to rest with a phone call or something, but the ones that seriously feel it, I just hate that they're having to pay a $250 fee if they truly, if we're trying to grandfather these
Right.
people in and we're trying to help these people out, just to have some type of time frame. Not a forever thing, a set time frame, doesn't have to be 90 days. I mean, I'm just throwing some numbers out there.
Can we
so
bring that language when we bring this to the vote?
Yeah,
that we have some?
Can you work to just get a resolution
Does
waiving?
that make sense?
Waiving, and I honestly don't think there will be a need for very many variances. I can't, with the way this one's written, with basically allowing anyone to park on their side yard, I can't think of too many situations where a variance would be
Yeah.
And I don't think,
valid.
and there may not be anybody who even comes up, but just to say, well, you guys this and that, so
Yeah.
let's just
Yeah.
work with maybe those few people that.
And I think you'd want it to be for the parking portion, not waiving the variance, to put in a different type of improved lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
just for that front yard.
Okay. The fee for a hearing usually, well, not usually, it does include the notification of all the neighbors within 300 feet. We send out the letters, it covers
Oh,
the
well,
postage and all that. It's just not a
That's
fee
the
to
extent,
assist.
I gotcha. And
I mean, there
I
are
gotcha.
costs that we incur.
Well, maybe we'll just do maybe a resolution to present to them next time that, we'll waive the fee, but, still encompass to cover the postage cost.
yeah, I
Just-
agree, the cost should be covered, but just, if we have some type of fee, we could waive. That- Yeah.
You're talking about the variance for the parking on the
Yeah.
grounds?
All right, well, Wanda's gonna get me in trouble if I don't quit talking, so I will answer questions of the agenda in the meeting.
Okay, I wish we hadn't had done that, because I've got some questions on the deal, but we can do it
Yeah.
there.
And they're gonna be embarrassing questions, so, yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, they just. I really have some questions of the street committee, and I just will often make them. You ready to go down? All right, well, welcome to the city council meeting for February the 21st. Glad to see we've got a pretty fair crowd in here and a couple of little people. All right. If we can stand, and Pastor Reapy, you're not the little person, and for our prayer and remain standing, and we're going to have a special guest lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will you bow with me? Father, we come to you tonight thanking you for this community that we have and the fellowship that we have and the camaraderie we have. And we thank you for our servants that are involved in this community, whether it's the fire, the police, or whether it's the chamber or the city council or whatever. Father, we just want to thank you for all their work and making this town great. And we just ask for wisdom tonight, Father, as the chamber meets and the council meets, rather, and that you just give them the wisdom to make the correct decisions. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We're going to have Gracie Wheeler come forward, and she's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And she's been practicing. Can you pull the mic? That a girl. Boy, does she know something about something? We're ready when you are, baby.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of Oklahoma, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Great job. Way to go, Gracie. Way to go, Gracie. You're not applying for a city manager's position, are you?
There might be one vacant pretty soon. You never know.
All right. Let me try and find my...
There's a bunch of other packets.
All right.
Yeah, you get it. I don't know.
Okay, we are going to call to order the Guthrie Industrial Development Authority, and we do have a quorum in place. Consent agenda is A, and we just have one, so Vice Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve item A at this time.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, please. Thank
Chairman,
you.
all the votes are in.
Show so motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 3.
All right.
City Manager.
Item 3, I'll give a brief overview, but then turn it over to the city attorney for some of the details. But this is essentially the resolution following a motion that you guys made and approved back in November of working with an outside funding entity to fund new infrastructure out at the airport. And this is extension of water and sewer lines out there to accommodate new hangar development, new corporate hangar development. Throughout the process, there's a desire, or there's been an expressed desire to continue to develop new hangars in the area. However, we don't have the infrastructure in place to accommodate it, and we don't have the funding to put towards such a large capital project. So there's an aggressive group of people who really think that there's some development opportunities out there, and it was put out to allow for an outside funding agency to come forth and make the loan for this if they were willing to only take the new revenues off those developments as payment, meaning that the citizens of Guthrie, the citizens of Edmond, we're not on the hook for the payments because we don't have the ability to pay that back. So, City Attorney, is there any other details that you'd like to share?
No, it's a 10-year note, but there's no amortization on it. It's 1.5% interest for that 10-year period, and it's solely repayable by hangar lease payments from the corporate hangars only and from utility hookup fees. No other payment. Edmond Economic Development Association has some economic development money available, and they offered to make this loan because they love the partnership at the airport and recognize the need for these hangars. And it's not a general obligation either of the City of Guthrie or the Guthrie Public Works Authority. It's GIDA only and repayable only out of those revenues.
Okay, does that clarify everything to this council?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the infrastructure that we're talking about, is this in the rural water district?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And that really will, if the worst case scenario, if we had to give up that water service, we probably would go ahead and make those utility hookup fees, or we'll change the payment that the hangar lessee has to pay to the city to cover them. So,
And knowing that litigation and knowing some of the people on the other side and how upset they get about certain things, do you see that because we will be messing again with the rural water district area, is that going to cause problems with our lawsuit?
no, I would anticipate we'd probably do the same thing with these revenues. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, that we've been doing with others that we've allowed to hook up within the district. We're not talking about a lot of money in this case at all. So I'm not concerned about the rural water lawsuit as having an impact on this loan transaction.
Okay. But this will be an area that is outside of, again, will be encroaching
Yes,
into the rural water area.
yes.
Okay.
It's outside of our 72 or whatever city limits, yes.
Matt, can you elaborate on what we've done in these situations? Is it something that we're knocking down that we're going to do?
Well, and this is kind of a unique situation. It's, it would almost be, to kind of put it in perspective, another area that's contested, the Mission Hills area. This would essentially be like adding a new house in Mission Hills. It's not laying completely new infrastructure for a new development. It's, extending infrastructure that's out there to accommodate. And, the airport is one of the areas that's been discussed throughout the, duration of this litigation. I think it would be wise, and that's the reason that there are no water or sewer revenues tied to this payback, meaning the only, revenues that go to the payback of the note are the hangar lease rentals and the taps into the line. That way, if the rural water case doesn't end up favorable to the city, we will have that money and it's not pledged to anything. And I would recommend that we do with this like we did with the daycare and we have with the other developments that are in the area that's questioned, and that's put it back in escrow to wait for the outcome of the litigation.
We did, when we first were negotiating the terms of this loan, we originally talked about pledging the water revenue stream from these hangars, corporate hangars only. And because of rural water, we opted not to do that and said that we would not do that. So the only thing we have are the tap fees that are pledged. So that's the worst case scenario that we.
Councilman, I think we've worked around trying to do everything and be straight up with what we want to do, understanding that, putting the money in escrow. So we're not generating a big revenue stream out of this thing. It's money to be put in escrow if case, as the city manager said, if case you go against us, that money would be.
Right, but we're not sure exactly how much that they would go after.
Well, I mean, as far as the water sales themselves, the ongoing water sales, well, that's the same situation we're in on all these territories that we've authorized hookup. They still have to be able to prove that they could make the service available. But these are minimum usage, number one, at these hangars. There's not a lot of water that's going to go through meter to begin with, and worst case scenario, the rural water is gonna get that or some portion of it, if they prevail.
A lot of what ifs.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the reason why the council has taken, the approach it has on these last few questions, is because there is, significant, area that, is wrapped up in the litigation, wrapped up in discussions, of our 1972 city limits versus, the service area that we have, and it's, kind of the best scenario we can make to still accommodate new growth and not just shut down the city from growing, but also put back the money, planning for a worst case scenario in the case of, rural water prevailing in the litigation, or, but that would be several years down the road, and that's kind of why the approach has been taken with these new developments, is that if, as long as we're keeping the money back, the worst case scenarios, that money will then someday go to the district and possibly that territory be turned over to them, but, that may be several years down the road before that's finalized.
And I think the critical thing, Councilman, is that the monthly water sales revenue is not part of the payback of this loan. And that is a legitimate concern. And that's why we basically took that off the table and said we can't do that, because we don't know what's going to happen to it long term.
It's the rent, you understand, it's the rent off of the hangars that is the payback.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion for approval of resolution 2012-02 at this time.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, please.
Chairman, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am. Show us how we felt. Motion passes unanimously, and, well, not unanimously, 5-1. Councilman Mueller abstaining, or voting no. Okay? All right. Motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Cast your votes for adjournment from Industrial Development Authority.
Chairman, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am. Show us how we felt. We are out of the special Guthrie Industrial Development Authority meeting. Call to order Guthrie Public Works. Community announcements, and I'm going to have my friend Lucy Swanson come forward. She gets so excited about this time of the year.
Dear Mr. Bircher, I'm going to, and council, I'm going to give the quarterly report of the CVB for the last quarter of last year. As per the contract agreement between the Guthrie Chamber of Commerce and the City of Guthrie, I'm enclosing financial records and a summary for the fourth quarter of 2011. The fourth quarter of 2011 was extremely busy for the CVB. We had several significant holidays and were called upon to promote each one to the best of our ability. Many groups chose Guthrie as a site for meetings, retreats, and family gatherings. We were able to help various groups, including senior tours, step-on tours, thanks to our resident historian and tour guide, Sharon Bowers, student groups, groups from other tourist towns such as Branson, Missouri, and many church groups. October brought new people to town to visit the new haunted house that was north of town. We publicized them through our Facebook, newspaper ads, Monday memo, constant contact, and exposure in our window. Although they were a new attraction for Guthrie, they claim to have had around 2,000 visitors during the month, many of whom came from outside Logan County. The Oklahoma Tourism and Recreation Department fielded inquiries from 37 states as far away as Alaska and the District of Columbia. We also met with several other CVBs to discuss options and ideas for promotions. Our marketing of the Territorial Christmas celebration began to kick into high gear with advertising in several types of print media. November took us into Christmas preparations full swing. Our schedule of events was published in several publications statewide, including the Daily Oklahoman, the Gazette. Our marketing company also secured a television spot on Channel 52's Hello Oklahoma show. The Oklahoma Tourism and Recreation Department had requests for information from 36 states and Puerto Rico. Besides the Christmas promotion, we were also encouraging some other attractions which would have the potential to increase tourism significantly were they to choose Guthrie as a home. December was hopping. We had great articles, reviews, and visibility in several state publications, such as the Daily Oklahoman, the Logan County Courier, the Guthrie News Leader, Guthrie News Page, the Edmond Sun, Metro Family Magazine, and we even had a video report from iReporter 2C, a Guthrie resident, on CNN.com. The Oklahoma Tourism and Recreation Department distributed information about Guthrie to 35 states and Puerto Rico again. We renewed our association with Frontier Country, including acquiring the front inside cover of their travel guide for 2012 and various event listings mentioned in Trips on a Tankful, Gal's Guide, and Red Hat Guide, and their holiday events rack card. These, plus representation at several travel shows and media blitzes throughout the year, reinforces our belief that the investment we made toward being a member of Frontier Country is well spent. We are also renewing our membership with the American Bus Association for 2012. This organization is helping us develop relationships with many of their members. Through these leads, we will be disseminating information about Guthrie that will attract tour groups from all over the country. The fourth quarter was very challenging, eventful, and lots of fun for the Guthrie Convention and Visitors Bureau. We were quite happy with the results of our efforts and look forward to serving Guthrie even more in the year to come. Sincerely, Mary Coffin.
Right. Lucy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does the council have any questions of Lucy? She loves to answer questions.
It's what I live for.
No questions. Lucy, again, thank you very much. All right, the consent agenda. I give you the consent agenda.
In that case, I'll give you a motion. I'd make a motion to approve at this time items A, B, C, D, E, and F.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Questions or comments? Hearing none, cast your votes, please.
Chairman, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am, show us how we felt. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Trustees, I'm sorry. Trustees. I adjourn the meeting. You know I can do that.
That's right.
Without a vote of the people there. Good job. All right. We are adjourned from Guthrie Public Works and are called to order the Guthrie City Council. We do have a quorum of council present. Vice Mayor, I give you the consent agenda.
I'll go one more time.
Love
here.
to do that for you.
I make a motion at this time to approve items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and we need to remove item K off of the list for this evening.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We are removing item K, so it will be A through J. Cast your votes, please.
Mayor, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am, show us how we felt. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. All right, we're going to open a public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, right.
I asked Councilman Ayers to pull item K to change this a little bit. We have, as you know, it's always been our goal. The last resort for us is to actually have to pay using taxpayer money to tear these dilapidated structures down themselves. And we've got one of these that came in today. We actually had a property owner, the property owner of 618 East Perkins, to get a demolition permit, has worked with planning staff, and we feel very confident that he is committed to having the property torn down himself. So we would like to amend that item to change that amount of the bid to a total of $8,188 for 514 South First and 518 South First.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a timeline for 618 to make sure that that person does carry through and that we're following that?
The demo permits are for 6 months, but if you've already declared this property a nuisance,
Right.
so you know it's already out there, it's declared. We're just not accepting the bid on it. These bids are good for 90 days, and so if there's no
Movement within 90
movement,
days.
if we're not seeing something, we can always reconsider this.
And do we have to take the lowest bids?
No, we can take the lowest and best.
Okay.
The reason I asked that is I saw that there were 2 local companies on the one, and our one local company missed it by $100. And I would just love it if we could somehow give local business the money instead of somebody outside just for a simple $100 difference.
Randall, is that a
It's really not an option under competitive bidding act.
Okay.
We'd all love for locals to have the business, but it's the lowest and best.
The lowest and best, okay.
And best is a part of that. But in this situation, I don't know of anything that would differentiate their bids that would allow you to give it to the higher bidder.
And essentially what we've done on these bids, and we set the bid up like this since there's, and we've actually got many more bids than we're actually recommending approval tonight, depending on how some of these other properties come through. But we bid it in a way where we could pick and choose pieces of each of the bids,
Right.
so that we could, when they're bidding on 8 houses, some of them are going to be different. And we anticipated that, we did it that way in case there was a group discount or bulk discount, I guess, for lack of a better term. But when we kind of added up the numbers, it's more cost effective for us just to go and pick, each one. So that's why through this process, you'll see, we won't be awarding, all of them to one bid. We're kind of picking and choosing from the different bids, and that was the way the bid was set up, so we could have those options.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, with that being said, I'd make a motion to approve bid number 2012-02 with the removal of 618 East Perkins and continuing on with the demolition of 514 South First and 518 South First in the amount of $8,188.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, please.
Mayor, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am. Show us how we felt. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Item 3, city manager, you want to speak on that, or you want me to just go ahead and, do I need to get,
Well, we do have a short PowerPoint presentation that we can go through if you'd like, showing some of the pictures. But basically, these are the 3 at the last the last meeting in January, we talked about 8 properties that were up for consideration to be declared public nuisance, and you declared 4 of them public nuisance and tabled 4 of them until tonight. And these are the 3 that. At one of those properties, we actually had the person come in and get the demolition permit. One of the people that spoke, and these 3 we don't actually have the permits yet. So I wanted Renee to give us kind of an update on them, so you can choose whether you want to declare them nuisance tonight or if you want to table them, for another month. All right, Renee, they're all yours.
Thanks for the intro. We just wanted to go through and give you, as Matt said, a brief update. Of the 10 properties, you'll be pleased to know 2 have already been torn down by the owners. We have 3 that are planning on being torn down by the owners. 2 owners want to go through and restore the property, and 3, the ones that you just approved tonight, would be a demolition by city. So that's the status where we are today. Mayor, shall I go through with each agenda item at this point?
Move on through.
Okay. We'll get through as quickly as we can. This is related to the location at 402 North Division. To give you an update from our January 17th meeting, the owner's daughter, Mrs. Scannell, wants to restore the property. Ms. Scannell had submitted an engineer's assessment that was done by Structures America Innovative Engineering in Edmond. They had indicated, quote, there is extensive damage to the structure due to exposure to elements. They further went on recommending that an additional structural engineer be hired for further consultation. So because of that, we asked that Ms. Scannell submit additional information. Hold on here. Just as a reminder, we'll go through. That's the picture that you had seen initially, indicating that she has gone through and
put out money to do an engineer's analysis. The basic foundation in a number of places had deteriorated substantially. A number of other places throughout the home, it's okay. But the engineer had indicated that he wanted her to get a structural engineer in there to go through and detail the fine components that need to be done in order to rehab the building. And that would conclude.
And on that one, we haven't been able to make contact with the property owner by phone.
No,
but
that is correct.
We have, because of our attempts of trying to do that, we have recently sent notification, of the need for another engineering report. So this is one, and we'll kind of talk about these one at a time. You tabled it tonight. You could go ahead and declare it nuisance tonight, or if you desired, you could table it again for another month. We have seen movement on it. We do need more. We do need that other report, but I think staff's recommendation would be, since we have seen progress, she has made the initial steps of having an initial engineering review, to at least table it another month to see if she comes through with the rest of the information that's needed.
Council, what's your wishes?
I would motion to table it then and give her a chance to finish it, until the next meeting, 2 weeks? Would that be enough? Or?
Do you think 2 weeks would be enough?
I'd like to give her a full month if I could.
I would motion that we give the owner of this property, 402 North Division, 1 more month to comply.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, please.
Can I make one comment? If we don't have it in a month, can we go ahead and make sure that we declare this a dilapidated structure and move towards? I mean, just as note my comment, because now we've been it'll be 2.5 months that we've given an opportunity to get the requested information. I think that's plenty of time, I guess.
Right. In this particular case, this party has gone to the extent and to the expense of having an analysis done, and I have to give her a little extra for that because she has shown positive movement forward.
Okay.
Well, I think the Vice Mayor is...
You're trying to amend the motion?
No, I'm not trying to amend it. I'm just trying to make a notation for the public record, if you will.
I think we're all tracking with that.
So I'm sorry, I'm not grandstanding, I promise. All right, cast your vote, there you go.
All right, we have a motion and we have a motion and a comment.
And
a second. And a second.
And a second. Cast your votes, please.
And Mayor, all the votes are in.
So that's how we felt. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you much. The next item on the agenda is at 915 West Washington. That again was originally heard by council on January 17th. The owner, Lula Lee, has agreed to work with Neighborhood Solutions regarding the disposal of the property. The owner and Neighborhood Solutions have met, and they are completing the paperwork now to transfer the property and have the structure demolished.
Is this in the flood zone?
This is in the flood zone, yes. Neighborhood Solutions is not taking it over, but what they're doing is working with another contractor to get the contractor together with this owner. The owner is signing the property over to the contractor. The contractor would like to investigate the possibility of doing some type of housing. He's fully aware this is a flood zone and would have to build it to FEMA standards.
Okay.
So again, kind of the same thoughts on that from the staff perspective.
Absolutely.
There has been movement on this property. There has been progress. And again, if we can have the opportunity for someone other than us to pay the funds to have it down, we would be very excited about that.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
I move that we declare, we table number 4 for the property at 915 West Washington for, I guess, a month, right? And
yes, please.
March 20th.
Yes, March 20th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, please.
Mayor, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am, show us how we felt.
No more
Motion
grants.
passes unanimous. No more statements?
No, no more.
Okay.
Always a
carries.
statement.
Thank you, council.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, yes, the next property is located at 1223 West College. This item also was originally heard by council on January 17th. The new owner, Mr. Myers, acquired the subject property just on January 1st of this year, and he wants to restore the property. We had indicated to him that since the building was open and was a nuisance because of the open windows and doors, that he needed to board the property up immediately, which he has done. He wants to totally restore it. We indicated at the time that he would need to submit an engineer's report before restoring and rehab. At this point, the building has been secured and boarded up, but we do not have any plans that have been submitted by him for restoration.
And have we made attempts to contact?
He was fully aware that the meeting was for tonight. I have not spoken to him in the last several weeks, though.
This is one we've seen minimal movement on. You know, it was boarded up, but we haven't received any type of documentation. We haven't received any type of progress report on the status. I think the only action that we've seen on the property is that it was boarded up afterwards. So.
That's after that last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke, right?
Yes, he did.
Spoke, and I believe at the time it was, you know, with all of them that we, you know, the ones that we tabled, the 4 that we tabled, we requested, you know, engineering reports and kind of plans of renovation, and to this point, we haven't received anything on this
And
property.
wasn't he supposed to have them at this meeting?
Yes.
Did we fill in that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what, if we say it's dilapidated, how does that change the dynamic officially?
If you go ahead and declare, you know, if you don't table this one and declare this one a public nuisance, same as the other ones, all of the bids, you know, again, are still good. They're good for 90 days. So we've got the bids. If you declared this, there would be a 30-day waiting period essentially, and we would have a bid before you on the 20th for the removal of this house.
So we could call that off if he does make some movement on it.
Right.
If we wanted to, last second.
Yeah, I mean, we did with, you know, one tonight, but that was a different thing. That was the property owner removing it himself. Randall, I don't know what the process would be of reversing the public nuisance if he did, you know, bring the documentation to.
You could hold off on issuing a tear-down bid if you're satisfied he's actually got a plan of rehab and got the engineering report that he needs. If he doesn't, then the bid's gonna be let and we're gonna tear it down.
I don't know that I'm seeing that.
No, either. Maybe we should just table it till the next meeting and try to get a hold of him, and if he doesn't, we need to just declare it.
Just give it 2 weeks. Just table it till the next meeting if you've received nothing.
Okay, I can do that.
You want to make that motion, Mary?
Sure.
So moved.
So moved.
Is that now? That one was for 2 weeks. So
Yeah, let's do it for the next
March
meeting.
March 6th.
Second.
Yes.
Okay.
No
All right.
comments, I don't have any comments.
No.
Comment with that?
Vice Mayor, any comment?
Yeah, not now.
No. All right, we're tabling it till the next meeting, so it'll be 2 weeks, looking for a response, and have a motion and a second on that. Cast your votes, please.
Mayor, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am, show us how we felt. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Yes, ma'am.
That should be the
That's it?
last of it. Just so that you know, the other 2 homes that were taken down by the owners after we had sent that initial letter, one was at 623 South Capitol, it's down, and the other was at 905 West Mansur.
Great.
Okay,
Great,
thank you.
thank you.
We're doing good things.
All right, resolution 6.
Resolution, well, item number 6 is to consider a resolution to lower the speed limit to 45 miles an hour on South Division, north of Prairie Grove, contingent on ODOT's approval. This was something that was discussed with the street committee last Wednesday, And we've been having several issues at that intersection. The intersection primarily of Mission Hills and Prairie Grove. You know the area very well, so you see a lot of the activity. Since 2009, we've had 9 pretty severe wrecks out there, and most of them, you know, it's kind of a blind area with the hills, and most of them have occurred with someone waiting to turn into Mission Hills or someone waiting to turn into Prairie Grove, and just have a driver, you know, plow into the back of them. You know, looking at the area and looking at how it's developing right now, when you come off of the interstate and you come into town, it's 55 miles an hour, and then there's another 55 miles an hour sign right there, right before Prairie Grove Road, and then it continues to 55 miles an hour until the drive-in theater where it switches to 45. So with the development out there and discussion with the street committee, it was recommended that that area, you know, between Prairie Grove and the drive-in switch from 55 to 45. So it would still be 55 up to Prairie Grove Road, so coming off the interstate, past the car dealerships, and up to Prairie Grove would still be 55, but just in the area where the apartments and the housing is developing, lower it from 55 to 45.
And how does that, from the clinic, where does that, is it just stay 45 out to Prairie Grove?
Yes.
Isn't it 45 about the clinic, doesn't it go down?
I think around, the clinic is pretty much right across from
It's 55 too.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it switches to 55, and then is 55 all the way out as it is now. But it would switch to 45 there and continue at 45 until Prairie Grove Road.
North. Okay.
I got one quick question, just out of curiosity. I know that that's going to be a ODOT situation, right, on the road. Is there any way that when new plans are being developed, if we could look at
Turn lane?
Well, de-acceleration lanes into new developments coming off of Division. I mean, it's something as we're looking for future planning, obviously, then we wouldn't be having this issue of changing it around.
Right. Yeah, and that's ultimately, you know, would be the best solution, because, you know, it's been mentioned to us, you know, why don't you look at requesting a light there? A light wouldn't really solve the problem, because you'd still have the issue, you know, there's 4 lanes there, there's a green light, someone waiting to turn in. Turn lanes would really be the only surefire thing but, you know, now it's well past the.
Yeah,
So we need to
too late, but I'm just talking about
development codes.
Well, what options do we have of requiring those types of lane on state highway? I mean, do we have much flexibility?
Oh, I think on any, pardon?
It could be written into the subdivision guidelines.
Yeah, we, in Edmond, when you develop on a section line road,
Yeah,
you're required to put in a
Put in
decel lane
deceleration.
in most instances, so you can put that in our code also.
Is it something we do in our code and then we go to ODOT to get their blessing and then it'd be official, or?
I don't even know if ODOT would need to bless a decel lane, but worst case scenario, they would. I can't imagine they would.
Seems like a no-brainer at that point.
Okay.
Safely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The developer paid for it.
Well, yeah, did you say the developer would pay for it?
Yeah. Under the subdivision.
And that would solve the problem, you know, of people turning right into the division. You'd still have the issues of people turning left, but, you know, making it safer one way. But of course that, you know, it's a little too late in that area, but yeah, it's a very good point for future areas. Let's make a note of that when we're revising those guidelines.
That's my last statement.
I bet it's not.
Good one, Trey.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Yeah, I think it's.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Cast your votes, please.
Mayor, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am, show us how we felt. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Item 7.
Item 7 is the same item that you guys approved during the GIDA meeting. I mean, is there anything different about this one than?
No, it's identical, but state law requires when a public trust issues a debt that the city council, the beneficiary, which is the city council, has to bless it. Even though you're not obligated to repay it, you have to approve it. That way you know what's going on. If it's a separate board that you don't wear the same hats, it will take at least 5 of you voting for this.
So moved.
Motion, second.
You got a second?
Cast your votes, please.
Mayor, all the votes are in.
Yes, ma'am, show us how we felt. And we will be back at 5-1. Passes. All right, city manager.
I'm kind of quiet tonight. I don't really have anything. I can make something up. Watch the forum this Thursday.
There you are.
That's
See,
right.
that's what I was looking. I'm sure glad I paused.
That's right. Normally, I don't get to promote at the council meeting because it's on the fourth Thursday and we're on the third Tuesday. But the way it's fallen this week, it's this week. So we've got the public information forum right here in the city council chambers, 9:30 on Thursday morning, and it's going to be very exciting. Email questions in forum@cityofguthrie.com. Theoretically, it's if technology agrees with us, it'll be streamed live on the website and on Channel 20.
And where's the mayor's going to be a $30 gift certificate, I believe, to Long John Silver's.
All right.
I want to say that's where it was.
Long John Silver's?
So where you at?
No, you can't.
I can't guess.
You're out, man.
You'll be at Long John Silver's, right?
And all right, Councilman Wood, take a lap. When you get back, we'll talk about it. Right. All right, Councilman Mueller.
Well, I see that my 4-year-old has fallen asleep in the audience. That's always a good sign. I just want to once again say how wonderful the Blue Jays wrestling team has done again, and they've got a couple of tournaments coming up this weekend. I wish them the best of luck. And also the public schools had a carnival this last weekend. I heard it was quite a success, and good job. That's all good.
All right, thank you. You got anything to say?
Got some. Well, while we're plugging schools, I'll take a moment to plug St. Mary's and thank everybody for coming to the Mardi Gras Festival fundraiser for the school. It was a great success, and we sure appreciate it. And I'm absolutely sick of gumbo at this very moment, but I do appreciate everybody coming. And it was, like I said, it was a good time, and I hope it just gets bigger and better every year. So I appreciate that.
There you are. All right. Dr. Wood. Yeah, I knew that was, yeah.
Okay, first, again, Guthrie, the wrestling team, probably people didn't pay attention to this. I don't know if they did, but they won the 2012 Academic State Championship. They averaged 3.65 GPA, so that's pretty amazing. Wrestling and having that type of GPA, those are special kids, so I want to congratulate them. On top of that, 8 of them were going to state, which is pretty
exactly
awesome
right.
too. So to be academic scholars like that is pretty neat. So the Logan County Relay for Life, they had the chili dessert cook-off, and they raised more than $900. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's all I have.
All right.
Oh,
You don't have any, wait a minute.
Okay.
I want to give him plenty of chance. Sure
I
you
got
don't?
it. Thank you.
Yeah, you thought I'd forgot from last meeting.
I did. I was
All right, Mary, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, you go, okay. I only have a couple things anyway.
Mary's usually a Thunder Steeler, so
Yeah.
she has a lot.
There's only a couple things going on, really. The Pollard Theater's still showing Tuesdays with Maury, and that'll be this weekend, will be the last day of that. The Lazy E has several things coming up. This weekend, they've got a Daniel Green team roping clinic. And then next weekend, they've got the largest event that they have out there, the Timed Event Championship. And that's the March 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So there'll be a lot of cowboys in town that weekend, spending a lot of money, eating. So it'll be a good time next week. Chamber Banquet is Thursday. We're going to have that out at the Job Corps. And of course, the council is always welcome to come out and will. That's it. Only a couple things. No, it's kind of quiet. It's February.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually there's snow or
It
something.
usually costs us so much money at Valentine's Day that we're just
Flat broke after that.
flat budget after that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Wait just a second. Vice Mayor, would you say something to Z?
What?
Well, he's got that look on his face. Yes, sir.
I didn't want to say a whole lot, but it's kind of nice to be at the end, but everybody says stuff, so you don't have to. Fat Tuesday, I just wanted to say Fat Tuesday, because it sounds cool, and then you guys said it, so, too bad we don't have Bourbon Street here, so.
Well, not for long. not long, and we get the distillery in and be there. Get it.
Mardi Gras next year.
Yeah, there you are.
In Guthrie.
There you are. It's got to stop doing it on Tuesday nights.
I don't have anything.
All right, got some great weather coming the next 2 days. Looks like the chamber banquet's going to be a great success. Looks like a lot of people lined up and ready to go. Cool. Proud of this community. We do a lot of great things, and I'm proud that we all stand up for this community. So that's what I got to say. We do have a new reporter. And I don't know if the camera guys can, new reporter from the Leader, and I'm sorry that you're here with Mike. And,
He can still write stories about you, Mayor. Be careful.
Just put it in a sports page. Put it in the sports page. Would you drop my chair? All right. Glad to have you on board. Just get a deep seat and a faraway look in your eye, because it's going to get wild and western. All right. You know what I can do? Meeting's adjourned.
Cheat.